There's the headline. U.S. anti-child pornography operation accidentally shuts down 84,000 websites and put the message on the front page. Imagine you've got a pool cleaning company, you've got a car dealership. I mean, it happened to, there's a list of them. It's incredible. You've got a site that sells Beanie Babies. You got a site that sells pocket knives. You got a site that sells, you name it, oil paintings, it doesn't matter. And your customers go there to look about an order they've made or to shop or to see if they want to call you to come mow their lawn. And there's a message that you are a child pornographer. Oh, I mean, this is the ham-fisted tyranny of a mega government in your face. So we're going to be breaking all of that down as well today. Now, remember, earlier this week, we covered the Business Insider report. Wisconsin National Guard preps for worker unrest after governor unveils emergency budget. And now it is being likened to the situation in Egypt, what is now unfolding in Wisconsin. This is a beta test as well as the protest and demonstrations begin to unfold via austerity around the United States, like we've seen in the Middle East and in Europe. They're now beta testing the rollout of selling the public on having their benefits cut. So I've got some details I want to go over on that front as well. Here today, a lot of important economic news. Glenn Beck is now coming out and saying boycott Google. It is all coming up today. Please stay with us right here on the GCN Radio Network, GCNlive.com. But it's really very simple. The internet was designed and built by DARPA and by the federal government. It was rolled out. It's been the only growth sector in our economy in the last 15 years, the only thing that's really allowed our economy to continue. And now, under the Cybersecurity Act, it openly, vertically integrates and forces the smaller companies to all be merged into a handful of megacorporations. And this, for more than a decade, has been the plan of a consortium of government, industry, and academic institutions known as Internet 2. How do we know all of this was coming? Because they lay out blueprints and give all the great reasons for it, but you can see what they're really doing. And they want taxes on the web, they want surveillance on the web, internet IDs on the web. The federal government has announced they want to just be able to shut off your website or even remotely destroy your computer. That's what John McCain's been pushing for years, without a judge, without a jury, without anything. Now what's happening is Homeland Security and the Justice Department do go to a court, but it's kind of like FISA, where a judge signs one and then they can do 1 million+ wiretaps with one order. It's not a real warrant. It's not a real seizure order. And the same thing's now happening every day or two. I see big articles in CNET News. I see articles in Wired. We write articles about it, where now if a site even links to torrents where people are streaming or sharing sporting events, you just put a link up there, they just shut your website down. And there's no recourse. That's just it. They just take over the DNS number and put a government Homeland Security message up there. And in fact, I'll put one of those articles on screen for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers so you can see what these orders look like. But Kurt Nimmo wrote an excellent article on this yesterday dealing with it. Kill switch beta, government blocks 84,000 websites. And if you scroll down on the article, you can see what the Homeland Security orders actually look like. Actually, Kurt didn't put one of the orders in his article, so we'll go over to the Gizmodo article, the other one you had up earlier, and show folks what the order looks like. Kill switch beta, government blocks 84,000 websites. Under the banner of fighting child pornography, the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice knocked out 84,000 websites last week. The websites did not host or link to child pornography, as the government claims. As part of Operation Save Our Children, ICE's Cybersecurity Crimes Center has again seized several domain names, but not without making a huge error. Last Friday, thousands of site operators were surprised by a rather worrying banner that was placed on their domain, reports Torrent Freak, a tech site. And it said advertisement, distribution, transportation, receipt, and possession of child pornography constitute federal crimes that carry penalties for first-time offenders of up to 30 years in federal prison, a $250,000 fine, forfeiture, and restitution was the message visitors to the sites were greeted with after a judge signed a seizure warrant, and Big Sis contacted the domain registers and instructed them to point the domains in question to a server that hosts the above warning issue message. And there it is on screen. Now imagine 84,000 plus websites, car dealerships, dog grooming places, lawnmower outfits, you name it, were on these server systems, and your customers go to your website and they see a Homeland Security seal saying this website's got child porn on it. And when you read deeper into the admissions, there was no porn period on any of the sites. The feds just do whatever they want. And all the globalists have to do if they want to take your site down, whether it was Facebook, but you know it's not going to happen to them, or MySpace, or whatever the case is, they go post an image, even if it's not child porn, claim it is, file the report, boom, your website's gone, and the message is put up that you are a child pornographer. This is the beta test for the complete and total takeover of the internet. And after Ray McGovern leaves us, I'm going to get more into this. So anybody that doubts that they can do this, that's what the Obama kill switch is. He says in the Cybersecurity Act, oh, if there's a flu problem or a terror threat or an economic threat, we'll just shut off all websites or selective sites and point people at our messages. And so that's it right there. This is beyond the Chinese communist. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.
Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
TV satellite signals were jammed and internet access was blocked for nearly the entire country.
So this is America.
The government
This is America. Who are you?
To communicate with each other, and it did not want the press to communicate with the public.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was live on CNN. Hillary Rodham Clinton giving a speech while the federal government moves to openly put in an internet kill switch. And, of course, that's the headline out of USA Today just yesterday, is that the federal government is worrying privacy experts by trying to pass a kill switch law. And there's Hillary up there saying how terrible it was that Hosni Mubarak had the internet shut down for much of a week a few weeks ago. And then Ray McGovern, another illustration of attacks on free speech, stands up, turns his back to Hillary Clinton. They're wearing his Veterans for Peace shirt. And we have photos up at Infowars.com, was bloodied and bruised and did not resist and was drug out by the security guards. Headline, McGovern bloodied and arrested at Clinton speech. He's a retired CIA officer turned political activist. McGovern was a federal employee under 7 U.S. presidents over 27 years, presenting the morning intelligence briefings at the White House for Ronald Reagan, George Herbert Walker Bush. And, of course, he's also an Army veteran of the Vietnam era. And he writes for ConsortiumNews.com. Ray, it's funny, you were just on last week, and I talked about seeing, of course, one of the big war criminals at a steakhouse here in Austin, Karl Rove, and we just simply stood up and said we're not going to eat in the room with somebody like Hitler, with a war criminal, and we left. And you talked about how, and many times you've confronted these people. You've confronted Rumsfeld and about the lies about WMDs. Then he lied again and said he didn't, and then you quoted him, and that was one of the more devastating exposés ever done on live TV. But now they're really getting rough with you, almost like this is East Germany or something, right?
Yeah, actually, the East Germans were much more gentle. I'm licking my wounds here, Alex, but thankfully the X-rays have come back and there were no bones broken. A lot of blood, and just sort of outrage just doesn't do it. I was standing, not saying a word. Sure, my back was to the secretary. The only thing she could see was veteransforpeace.org, if she could, read that small lettering. On the front of my shirt, of course, I had Veterans for Peace. And I just was trying to show the people there at DW and Hillary Clinton that not everyone agrees with the quixotic and immoral policies that she is a prime mover for. She's never known a war that she didn't love. And she keeps threatening Iran for no specific reason other than her devotion, her very sincere and very close devotion to the interest of Israel. So there is a person that is a bad influence on the whole world, and it troubled me deeply to see everybody applauding so generously and sitting down so respectfully. I was not about to do that, so I stood, turned my back, and I was focused just in the back of the room and completely blindsided when that burly, 250-pound guy in a suit, as I said, grabs me from the side, crawling over four women who were to my left, and the next thing I know, I'm in the aisle, and it was just, I didn't know who he was. I was in such shock that I forgot the drill in the Code Pink manual, which says as soon as they do that to you, you scream what you want to scream, and you let the whole world know what you're standing for. I couldn't even do that. I was so shocked until I get toward the back, and then I said, so this is America, huh? This is America. And then it struck me, I didn't know who these guys were. And so I said, well, who are you? And, of course, they never got an answer to that. So it's pretty egregious.
So basically, private goons or secret police, we don't know, tackle you, bloody you all over your body. Photos are up at Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com. Also, Partnership for Civil Justice that originally took and posted the photos. Free speech is so deadly dangerous, even at George Washington University, that if somebody quietly stands up and turns their back, they've got to be punished. Obviously, this was an assault on you, Ray. Breaking this down, walk through, for those that are listening on the radio, again, where you were, the atmosphere, what happened, and what they did to you once they had manhandled you and tackled you and drug you out. Yeah.
Well, the scene was George Washington University, an auditorium there. The indigenous, so to speak, the people who were invited, were incredibly respectful, too respectful to my lights of the secretary. And I stood there for the first couple minutes, and what happened to me I just explained. I was dragged out, and then, they put two sets of handcuffs on me, the metal kind that bites into your skin. There's blood all over the back of my pants, my blood. And I was bleeding profusely, so I said, hey, you got some gloves? And they put me in the EMT thing that rolled up and took my vitals. And then next thing I know, I'm discharged, or not discharged, but given over to the D.C. police on charges of what do they call it, disorderly conduct. And I'm taken up to the precinct there and put in this little cell of the size that Bradley Manning occupies, about 10 feet by, maybe 4 feet. And spent the next 3.5 hours there. And the let out in the evening, and they said, "I'll go home. You're on. You got to go to court on this. You disorderly conduct guy." And so I went to the hospital in my neighborhood. They dressed my wounds and took the X-rays, and as far as I know, there are no fractures, and I'm just bruised and battered. But I tell you, if Americans don't stand up to this kind of treatment, they're not going to be standing up anytime soon for anything.
Well, in my own experience, when George W. Bush had me arrested at a press conference for politely asking a question, and if folks want to see it, just search Alex Jones arrested for asking George W. Bush a question. They twisted my arm so far behind my back. Once I got outside, I wasn't resisting. It's all on video. That I still have a torn rotator cuff, but I don't like surgery, so I've never fixed it. Then in New York, I was arrested for demonstrating peacefully, and they grunted when they put the handcuffs on, and of course it cut my hand with every bit of force. And this is really a form of torture and a form of recrimination. And so they bloody you, you've got cuts all over you, bruises all over you, cuts from the handcuffs. They jump on you, and then you're the one that's disorderly. Instead of just leading you out, they escalate the situation. I hope that you engage in some type of counterclaim or a FOIA request. Did the police get the names of the people that tackled you?
The big brutal guy, and he was the guy that hurt me most, is as yet unknown to us, but there's... You can see his photo there as he drags me out, so I'm told that it won't be too hard to find out who he is and who told him to do what he did. That would be my interest, to find out whose orders he was following.
Probably State Department Security Service. I'll tell you a story. I was at Bilderberg 2008. Obama and Hillary there for their secret meeting. The press didn't know where they were for over a day. When they disappeared, we knew. We saw them go in. And the day before that, I'm at the nearby hotel to cover Bilderberg, and we're there at the bar eating hamburgers and some of us drinking beer. And these big burly guys come in and start asking if we want to engage in terrorism with them or if we want to attack the State Department with them. They know how to get in. And then later I did identify and see them at the Bilderberg meeting. Once it was shut down, they were State Department Security Services and U.S. Marine Corps. Isn't that a violation of posse comitatus, Ray, to have federal secret police running around trying to provocateur?
Well, if they're active duty military, yes. But, the broader question, Alex, is so it's illegal. So what's your problem? I mean, we do lots of illegal things now for the last decade, and we're the sole remaining superpower of the world, and you just better watch out, because what happened to Alex or what happened to Ray could easily happen to you. That's the message.
Let me ask you this, Ray. Aaron Dykes, a year ago, went to UT, an open event with thousands with Karl Rove, and they only took written questions. So during the questions, he stood up and said, what about the Downing Street memo, the White House memo? What about the fact that you guys lied about WMDs? And he didn't resist. They took him out and charged him. I mean, so I guess in America now, if you ask a question, you get beat up or charged or both. I mean, is that a free society, Ray?
Well, it's verging on that. Alex, I can't avoid the opportunity to just read a couple of sentences from Hillary Clinton's speech. It was 3 paragraphs after she watched me be brutalized by those goons, and she shows complete sensitivity to using violence against protesters. This is what she said. What happened is, once again, using violence against protesters who are seeking basic freedoms. Now, she's talking about Egypt. She's talking about Iran, okay? And then she says, what they do is they stood and they marched. She's reading this thing, and it seems to be, or at least pretends to be, completely oblivious of what just happened 4 paragraphs before. The woman is a menace. I mean, whatever she learned at Yale Law School, where she shares the laurels with her husband and with the likes of John Yoo, I mean, it wasn't justice. It may have been some laws or something, but even those laws are sort of applicable only if this privileged class of dignitaries say they're applicable. You know, I do a little aside here. I was reading cables 2 months ago from Tunisia, and there's one from the ambassador talking about this splendid palace that he was treated to dinner at, and it was just really over the top. They had frozen custard flown in from Algeria, and they had a tiger in a cage, just like Saddam Hussein's son used to have. And he reports this, and then at the end he says, you know, the people are suffering, and they don't have enough to eat. Okay, now reverse that and have somebody from Egypt or Algeria or Tunisia reporting from Washington and having attended the wedding of Hillary Rodham Clinton's daughter, okay, in which over $1 million was invested. It would be the same thing, you know. Americans can't find a job.
And you've got one of the sons of the banksters that are robbing us that she's marrying.
Yeah, they fund these weddings and so forth. So, you know, it's just a matter of time. I think Noam Chomsky was on Amy Goodman this morning, and I think he's got it right. They'll do this to us as long as we sit back and say, oh, well, you're not doing it to me. Do it to those upstarts like McGovern, you know, or like other people like that.
Well, Ray, we're almost... Absolutely. We're almost out of time with you. I want to commend you for what you've done, and others should obviously follow in your example if they have the courage and understand how high the stakes are if we don't start saying no to this open corruption, but not just after they drug you out, right before they drag you out. And we were playing the clip earlier. She's talking about the Egyptians standing up, getting involved, the internet, and then how horrible Mubarak was to cut the internet off. But then meanwhile, it's all over our news. The feds just shut down 84,000 innocent websites this week. They're openly calling for an internet kill switch. They're openly saying the government needs to be able to redirect the entire internet or part of it to their messages if they see fit. I mean, we see a real move by the old line corrupt corporate media and government circling the wagons against the American people because they know the type of flare-ups we see in Egypt and Mexico and now in Wisconsin are coming to every city and town in America. What's your take on the internet kill switch and the trial balloons being sent up to sell us on getting rid of the free web, and the Pentagon saying that we're about to be hit by internet terrorists and that we need to get rid of internet freedom because of the Stuxnet, when it's admitted that Israel and the U.S. launched the Stuxnet? They've got a lot of bravado to launch the attack, admit tacitly they did it, and then call for the end of the internet freedom because of their own attacks. Are you worried about a false flag on the web?
Well, you know, I'm not technically proficient enough to be intelligently worried, but when I look at all the other things that are going on, and when I know things that not many Americans know, the Pentagon guy who runs all this stuff, his name is Keith Alexander, and he was head of NSA and still is, and now he heads up this cyber war new agency. Now, why do I single him out? Because he lied through his teeth. When a congressional member of the House Intelligence Committee, went out to see him and asked him whether they were snooping, whether they were eavesdropping on Americans, he said, "Oh no, we would never do that." Too bad for him, but the New York Times had already told the White House that James Risen's book was coming out with chapter and verse about this activity. So he lied to Congress. That's a felony, okay? Now, the congressman in question called him on the carpet and said, "Look, you're never going to get another promotion." And guess what? He gets another promotion and another agency. So you've got a bunch of very corrupt people there, and they'll do whatever the likes of Hillary Clinton and, I'm sad to say, Barack Obama tell them to do.
Ray, I know you're extremely busy today. We're going to break, and if you can't do it, that's fine. But I'd like to come back and do 5 brief minutes with you on Iran saying they're sending ships to the Med, and on just a snapshot, since we talked to you last week, on your take on what's happening in the Middle East. Can you do that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, we only got 45 seconds before the break. Tell us about Consortium News.
Well, I'm very proud to have found run by an investigative reporter, I think, is probably among the 5 best in the country. His name is Robert Perry. He had the guts to quit his profession as a writer and analyst for AP, for Newsweek, for Frontline, because they wouldn't let him up his own website in 1995.
We're going to talk more about it on the other side. It's consortiumnews.com. We're with Infowars.com. Stay with us. Ray McGovern, a former top CIA analyst to Ronald Reagan, George Herbert Walker Bush, Vietnam veteran. He is our guest for 5 more minutes. Iran's state-run TV, Press TV, has confirmed they are trying to get gunboats through the Suez Canal, trying to get permission from Cairo right now. Israel calls that a war provocation in the Jerusalem Post and AP, and says they may respond with force. So I guess everybody else is allowed to have warships in the Mediterranean, but I guess this is some type of blockade. What do you make of that and other developments? Give us a quick snapshot on that, Ray, of what's unfolding right now in North Africa and the Middle East.
Well, the short answer, Alex, is that there's a big loser, a really big loser in what's happened over the last 4 weeks, and that is Israel. For the last 32 years, they've had no reason to worry at all about their western and their southern flank, and that gave them free rein to do what they've done against Lebanon, against Gaza, against the West Bank Palestinians, and so forth. They can't depend on a secure southern western border now because, the situation is totally new in Egypt. Now, everyone says they want a democracy in Egypt. Even the Israelis say that. But they don't really, because you know what a democracy would mean. The polls show that the Egyptians hate the Israelis. Why? Not because of their vaunted democracy, but because of their policies. And so unless Israel changes its policies toward their Palestinian brothers and sisters, the brothers and sisters of many of the Arabs in Egypt, and there are 80 million people there, of course, unless the policy changes, they stand to countenance a neighbor to the south that has strong feelings about what they do to other Palestinians, to the Palestinians in Gaza, for example. Now, how does that translate into your question? Well, if the Israelis want to mount some sort of provocation to divert attention or just to show their muscle, they could easily cause a crisis in the Suez Canal or nearby on pretenses that the Iranians are actually causing the provocation. I would hope that Obama would put a bug into Netanyahu's ear and say, look, Benjamin, we're not going to come to your aid if you get involved in a war with Iran. But I have no guarantee, Alex, that Obama has enough backbone to say or to do that. And so the initiative, once again, is in the hands of those Israeli leaders. And if they see it to their advantage to stir up things in the Middle East, they're going to go ahead and do so with the full expectation that our Congress, in the influence of the Israel, or with the Likud lobby is what I call it, will applaud and pass an approving measure by 420 to 10 or something like that. So the situation is dicey, and the reason it's dicey is because Israel has lost an awful lot here, and I don't know what they'll do to redress their position. But I can't visualize the Israelis sitting back and say, it's going to be really interesting to watch Wolf Blitzer on CNN and you see what's going on. No. Suleiman, the torturer, he was their man in Cairo. He doesn't seem to be in the picture anymore, but I don't know where he is. Maybe he's in Sharm el-Sheikh consulting with other Israelis. And in other words, they have plenty of influence there. They have plenty of people upon whom they can depend in Cairo. And it's going to be really interesting to see what they choose to do. Not whether they choose to do something, but what the Israelis choose to do in reaction to what's happened to them.
So definitely conflict in the Middle East is moving towards the front burner.
Well, I hope not, but it looks like it could. There's a degree of instability there now that did not exist just a short 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Ray, we're out of time. Thank God you didn't have any bones broken. Go with God. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks a lot, Alex.
All right, we'll be right back with the Internet Takeover. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want. I was talking to a national magazine last night, and they were asking me to give them examples for a big feature report about Glenn Beck ripping off what we cover and what we do here. And I made it clear to them, because a lot of media, a lot of big publications, and national television has reported on it as well, have noticed that Glenn Beck's gone from kind of being a mainline Republican, a rhino, to more and more sounding just like this radio show. And I know from inside sources he has a team of 5 people that randomly listen to the show and check what we cover and then go over it. But I want to be clear. I'm covering the truth. And so I don't have an overall problem with Glenn Beck taking our research, our information, my understanding of things, and presenting it. Except for the fact that he does twist it. And he does, not go to the top of the pyramid. He kind of attacks low-level people. But that's a big step in the right direction. So some people then say, well, why do you, once a week or so talk about Glenn Beck? Well, what am I supposed to do? He's a major phenomenon, probably reaching 30 million people a week. He's seen as the leader of the Liberty Patriot movement. He's not trustworthy, and so we've got to discuss Glenn Beck. We have to. I mean, his people are watching and listening right now. And so here I am, a guy on the air for 16 years, and someone who's reaching millions of people a day. Don't have the reach of Glenn Beck. He's probably got 4 or 5 times the reach I do, but we're growing exponentially. I've never sold out to the New World Order, so they've just basically created someone who they think they control to doppelgang my work. But it's not 100% my work. But I was thinking about examples of Glenn Beck going with exactly what we've said. And I was writing some notes on it just before I went live today. The biggest one right now is last night. Glenn Beck said we've got to boycott Google. Where have you heard that? Because they're an NSA, CIA front. Well, that's a public fact. Now Glenn Beck who normally worships government and the intelligence agencies, did multiple segments last night. NBC's covering it. They're all attacking him because he's right. And he's admitting that this is a globalist overthrow of Egypt to destabilize the Middle East. I mean, there's an example. Who said boycott Google? Who's beaten the drum for at least 6, 7 years that they're a CIA front? Beck's doing it again. We challenged Beck to cover eugenics and poison in the water. And George Bernard Shaw, he does it now. We've played the clips of Obama advisors saying they need a new Oklahoma City to be blamed on their political enemies. And that I warned it would be blamed on Glenn Beck and yours truly, because I've seen what Media Matters and others are basically preparing the ground for. Beck's come out now and said the government may stage an attack and blame it on him. I mean, right down the line, we've always talked about don't believe us, check the documentation. We've always done graphics and things dealing with puppets and how the globalists are above it and how the mega rich are controlling the grassroots against the middle class. I mean, no one can deny. So obviously, my destiny now, to a great extent, and Beck's destiny are intertwined. So I'm surprised I don't talk more about Glenn Beck. He also does things like saying FEMA camps are real. And then he comes out and says they aren't real. So he also takes our issues and then tries to build straw men and discredit them. That's why I'm getting into this right now, is because here is NBC. Glenn Beck urges Google boycott. And they make jokes about him here. This is not a joke. And this is very serious. And it shows an internal fissure, a fight going on between different branches of the New World Order. So I'm going to go over what Glenn Beck's up to with Google and then get into internet kill switch beta test. Government blocks 84,000 websites. And then coming up at the 24 after, we come in. We're going to take your calls at 800-259-9231. 800-259-9231. Stay with us.
I'm really not sure that I want my search engine involved in government overthrows, good or bad. What I want from a search engine is good search results. This is not the issue. I'm not afraid that Google is reading my email or tapping your phone lines or stealing grandma's recipes. That kind of paranoia is reserved for the left during the Bush administration with Microsoft.
Okay, let's stop right there. I'm not going to play the whole 4-minute clip, but if you want to pull it up online, the whole thing's there. That's why I have a problem with Glenn Beck right there. Did you hear it? Google's not reading your emails. Google's not tracking you. No, Google is using the camera on your computer. Google told us 5 years ago. We wrote articles about it. They're using the microphone on your computer to watch and listen to you using NSA software. Google was created on record by a consortium of the CIA and their public funding firm, In-Q-Tel, and the National Security Agency. None of this is debated. This is all on record. So he starts to tell you the truth, and I'm going to go over what he said, and I've got MSNBC's report on it, which is attacking him wrongly, but not on the facts. Oh, you can attack Glenn Beck here. This is so sophisticated, but it's also brazen at certain levels. He's telling you that, oh, it's the left that's concerned about Big Brother. It's the left. So people who see themselves as the right say, well, I'm not worried about having my phones tapped or my email read. That's something liberals are concerned about. No, that's something Americans are concerned about. And if I tried to play the whole clip, he did several segments on it. It would take hours to analyze the truth and the lies. And that's what's dangerous about Glenn Beck. You get more truth from Glenn Beck than anybody else on national television or radio. He will go the furthest, and that's why he's number one, quickly overtaking Rush Limbaugh. You add his TV show into the mix, he's bigger than Limbaugh. But always buried in there is lies. You heard him say it's kooky and weird and liberal to think Google's spying on you. Google is having criminal charges laid on it in Europe and the U.S. Google admits they drive around the entire Western world with vans and trucks with antennas stealing your wireless data. Google admittedly takes photos of your house. Google admittedly is spying on people and blocking out news that they don't want to get to the American people and censoring information like Infowars.com. Google openly supports Obama like no one else. Google has secret air bases, that's Associated Press, at NASA facilities. Google is meeting today in a secret meeting with the president, Steve Jobs, Eric Schmidt, and Mark Zuckerberg, to meet with President Obama today in San Francisco in a closed-door meeting. ABC News. We told you 3.5 weeks ago, day one, that Google was in there running the revolution. We told you that a week and a half before the supposed Google executive disappeared, and then now they say that he ran the whole thing. We told you on record. Glenn Beck listens. He figures it out. Now, does he come out and tell you the full truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? No. He says it's kooky to think that Google's spying on you. But then he goes on to balkanize and make it a political left-right issue that if you're concerned about Big Brother, you're a nut and you're a liberal. Then he goes on in the piece to say that Google is in bed with the NSA and the CIA. Not that they founded it, not that they run it, but that they're in bed with it. He goes on to say Microsoft is good. Microsoft is on record building back doors into all their software for the federal government. That's not debated. Microsoft is on record funding the UN and world government and carbon taxes. So is Rupert Murdoch. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. All these guys at the top are. And they know there's a left and a right, so some of them play the part of the left leaders, some of them the part of the right leaders. And Fox News has tried to deny the world government, the New World Order, for so long that they've been discredited. So they go, well, we got to control this movement, let Beck go in and pose as a patriot, and that will fool people. Well, not on my watch. Fox, we just exposed you because you asked for it with fake video of Ron Paul being booed. Fox had to apologize this morning and said it was a mistake. We're watching you. My listeners are watching Mr. Maddow and what he's doing. We're watching what the MSNBC slime is doing. We're watching what the CNN slime is doing. We're watching what Anderson Cooper, admitted CIA, is doing. We are watching what you, Becky boy, are doing. And we're watching you close. Now, I've covered some of the disinformation from Beck, but now let's get into the way the media is attacking him from another deceptive angle. Lies within lies, deception within deception. This is NBC News. Glenn Beck urges Google boycott. Where have you heard that for years? Where have you heard that? Right here. Where have you heard that there's government run? Right here. Where have you seen the proof? Right here. People say, well, why do you cover Glenn Beck? Because he's the leader of the Patriot movement. Fox News has inserted him to try to take over the Tea Party. He's the guy who makes fun of Ron Paul at key points. He's following a script. We've got to cover Glenn Beck because he is usurping what I've done, what you've done, and so our destiny is tied to him. He's tied to us. Whether you like it or not, he speaks for people that don't want a world government, who don't want to live under tyranny. So that's why we cover it, and he's taking everything we cover and spinning it and twisting it. We read you the quotes of White House advisors calling for an Oklahoma City-style attack to be blamed on patriots. Months later, Glenn Beck covers it with precision and says they're preparing a new Oklahoma City. Pretty bold. You know why Beck did that? It was a shot across the bow. He can see Media Matters and George Soros groups. In those articles, he said he's being set up. No, in those articles, it's Alex Jones, Glenn Beck, and Ron Paul. They're lumping in the Judas Goat, Glenn Beck, with the real McCoys, Ron Paul and Alex Jones. I'm under attack almost every day on Media Matters. Every week on MSNBC. They produce specials on MSNBC saying I'm dangerous. The Southern Poverty Law Center says I'm one of the most dangerous people in America. They're now going after Beck. And this is going to get into the internet beta kill switch test. This is huge news, but first we start with Beck. But, oh, if you don't like Big Brother or you think it even exists, you're a kook. I've had people on the street come up to me and say, Alex, I used to like your show, but you're a liar. There's no way public schools are watching kids over their government-issued laptops at home. And I'm like, but it's in hundreds of newspapers. They've settled out of court. They admit they were doing it. One school, 35,000-plus images, watching kids in their bedrooms. But see, people still can't believe Big Brother's that bad because they've been told it's kooky. So instead of check out what I'm covering, I told you about it years before it came out in the news, California, Kansas, Tennessee, Pennsylvania. I mean, these articles come out in the local news. Cameras in the school bathrooms. I mean, just search Google watching and listening to you over your PC. We wrote articles in 2005, I guess 6 years ago. At prisonplanet.com. Where do we get our information? Google filed patents and put out a press release saying their new ad system they want to roll out listens through your microphone and your camera. But they said, don't worry, people aren't listening to you. It's keyword software. So they hear a dog barking in the background was the example they gave. You'll have dog food ads pop up on your computer screen. It's a lot bigger than just geolocation. You ever notice you see Google ads on a site and it says, you know, it'll have an ad for a restaurant a mile from you and you're like, wow. Well, that's because they're tracking you. But it's much worse than that. It's much worse than tracking your IP address or loading cookies onto your computer. And this is all admitted that Google's spying, Google's stealing information, Google's manipulating news, Google's filtering out things they don't want known, Google's working for the globalists to overthrow countries. And Glenn Beck says boycott them because they're helping the Muslim radicals and the Muslim Brotherhood, but they're not Big Brother. And he goes on in the piece to say they're NSA. Bay Area conservative pundit Glenn Beck said he will no longer use Google or its products because of perceived ties to government agencies and its involvement in the uprising in Egypt. Perceived ties? Even the MIT magazine reported on that 5-6 years ago. He said on his Fox television program Wednesday, "I'm really not sure that I want my search engine involved in government overthrows, good or bad." Beck said on his Fox show, "There is a strange thing going on with this search engine and our government, and we all have to choose who we do business with." Well, yeah, Google's trying to take over the whole web through cybersecurity to shut down their competition. Have you read the Cybersecurity Act, Beck? It's kind of like the car program where you could get a loan for putting in your clunker, and the government had a message saying, "We will seize control of your computer. We own your computer. We can track you once you agree to sign on to our computer." We covered that a month before, then Glenn Beck covers it. He goes on to talk about how they're connected to the NSA. They have the quotes here. So they're NSA, but they're not spying on us. I see. Okay, if you just joined us, I've had a lot of national news media the last few months, including one of the biggest magazines in the country, writing profiles on yours truly. I've gotten calls, Vanity Fair, Rolling Stone, the list goes on, and they've all noticed that Glenn Beck does basically take whatever news we cover a year ago, a month ago, and take it and spin it. So this is a big issue, but it's only a subset of the larger issues. But here we are telling you that Google is admittedly an NSA CIA front. That's not even denied. I've read all the mainstream reports, the MIT reports going back. Google's only 12 years old. It is a government front. So, of course, it's overthrowing Egypt. Of course, it's trying to overthrow Saudi Arabia. Of course, it's trying to overthrow Yemen and Jordan and did overthrow Tunisia. Of course, WikiLeaks was involved in that because these are fronts. They want global revolution. They want global destabilization. And Glenn Beck is right about that. The question is, why is a power block that runs Fox and News Corp allowing this truth on air? Because there's an internal war at some level inside the New World Order. This is a big deal. The fact that they let Glenn Beck go on TV and talk to 3.5 million people a day, 15, 16 million people a day on radio, is incredible. But you notice he adds all these lies into it about, don't worry, Google's not spying on you, but they are the NSA. Don't be a kook liberal. What, a kook liberal? What does that have to do with it? So he's, I'm going to talk about FEMA camps, and then he comes out and discredits them with straw men. The article continues, however, most of his vitriol was aimed at Google working with hardcore leftists. These aren't leftist overthrowing countries. Although Beck said he was not suggesting a boycott, he implores viewers to follow him in his, boycott against Google. Beck said he would outline ways that viewers could avoid using Google in his Thursday show. And I guess that'll be alternate search engines. I know there's startpage.com that Catherine Albrecht's involved with. Maybe he'll mention that. Don't hold your breath. The funny part is that Beck says Google has ties to the National Security Agency. No, he doesn't say that. Even the Washington Post admits that in the last few years. General Services Administration to MoveOn.org. So, Google is kind of a hawkish and conservative. How, if it's part of MoveOn.org, is it hawkish? How they try to discredit him and claiming that these groups are hawkish when they're not hawkish. So Google is kind of hawkish and conservative, then moderate, then liberal, all at the same time. It doesn't make much sense because they're not hawkish or liberal or conservative. They're globalist. They're one-worlders on record. They give money to all these UN organizations. So see, they then go on and try to claim that Beck is confusing and doesn't make sense because they know the world is complex and they're hoping that you're not complex enough to understand it. It doesn't make much sense, but perhaps Beck will bring out a puppet show and make it all crystal clear. Ha, 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 ha. And it goes on to say, for the full Glenn Beck segment, click here. We don't have time to analyze the whole thing, but you have... Here's the truth. Here's the skinning. The Pentagon and DARPA created the internet back in the 1960s, brought it online for the general public in the late 1980s. It was generally accepted, went into heavy use in the mid-1990s, and now it's ubiquitous. It is used to conduit and control and limit what information you can get. First, the web is somewhat free. Now, under stated Internet Tube programs, they're going to phase that out with regulation, taxation, arbitrary shutdown of web domains, 84,000 just this week. Google now admits they're filtering news they don't like, information they don't like. Google has declared, we wrote an article a few weeks ago about this that Drudge Report linked to, about how they are beta testing, blocking out, quote, content farms like Infowars.com and DrudgeReport.com. And so they're now moving into the internet kill switch era. They're now moving in to that program. And you had this developing under Bush and now under Obama. And it's a total continuity of a government. It's Bush that wants the cybersecurity and his controllers. It's the same NSA people running cybersecurity today. It's continuing under Obama. This is a continuity of agenda. They are continuing the exact same program, but Beck makes it a liberal issue. The media makes it Obama's kill switch, when this is exactly what George W. Bush was pushing for and what Jay Rockefeller was pushing for 5 years ago and what John McCain's been pushing for, remote kill switches where they claim you had copyrighted material, no judge, no jury, no due process. They fry your computer remotely with built-in erase switches that Microsoft has built in, that Apple has built in under the national security moves in the Telecommunications Act. All the devices themselves have been designed with remote government takeover systems, just like the radio and TV stations. That's what's going on. They tried to ignore our information for many years, but now they're having to respond to it, and they're trying to spin it. I want to finish up with Google's plan to take over the internet and hence the world, and how it is a military-industrial complex arm, not of America, but of the private banking cartels that have financed the takeover of the U.S. and now much of the world. So I've gotten into Glenn Beck. I've spent a lot of time on him and his attack now on Google. And the media is making fun of him, saying he's crazy. He thinks Google's involved in the overthrow of Egypt, when Google's bragging they are. That's how dumb NBC, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN think you are. So he brings out limited truth. Then they attack him for saying the sky's blue, the sun is yellow, and that the moon is white. That's how dumb they think we all are. And as we awaken, as we begin to look under the rug, as we begin to look beneath the floorboards, as we begin to just pay attention and not just sit there drinking beer, mindlessly watching television, the scams they run on us will become more and more evident. I'm going to go to your calls in a moment, but we wrote a big article about this yesterday. It's also been picked up by CNET News, torrentfreak.com, and others. This is the rest of the story. The federal government is announcing taxes of the web, internet IDs, remote kill switches for the entire internet or for your select computer. Under federal regulations for 14 years now, all computers, all cell phones, all broadcast radio, all broadcast TV, everything is wired through government kill switches that can also take over the radio and TV station. Last week, Obama's people put out a press release saying that he's going to now start having announcements that break in on the radio and TV. Announcements that break in on your cell phone with text messages or even videos. 9,000 locations with telescreens telling you watch your neighbors in the town park, in the county square, at Walmart, at the mall, at the grocery store. I mean, this is the grid. License plates the feds want with the states that flash ads to pay for it, that then flash most wanted photos. Digital computer screen that's waterproof, water resistant as your license plate. I mean, this is a bombarding system where basically the whole country, the whole world, when they're done, will be something akin to places like in New York City and Times Square where you're just assaulted by propaganda, assaulted by images, whether you like it or not. This is their full submersion into this high-tech matrix tracking grid. But one of the latest salvos against the internet are the feds, and I see this every couple days, I know you see it as well, arbitrarily shutting down 1,000 websites, 10,000 websites, 84,000 websites, shutting down sports sites that link to sites that are streaming sporting events. Not streaming it themselves, no. Linking to it. And now, 84,000 websites, including dog groomers, real estate companies, companies selling cutlery, companies selling lawn service. An entire ISP was taken over, and now it turns out there was no child porn on any of the websites at that ISP, and they ordered the ISP to flip 84,000 plus, they round down to 84,000 in the news articles, websites, and put a message on screen saying this website is involved in child porn and has been seized. Does that show you how arrogant, how hubris-filled, how unfeeling and unthinking the federal government is, knowing they can send up these trial balloons, knowing that they can set these incredible precedents to not just take over your website for no reason and destroy your business and your free speech and your life, but to now have all your customers for 3 days, this was up, go to your website and hear that you're a child porn trafficker who's had their website seized. So here's the headline from Kurt Nimmo: Kill Switch Beta, Government Blocks 84,000 websites. Here's the article out of Tech Freak, and it links directly to the federal government's own admissions of this. U.S. government shuts down 84,000 websites by mistake, they say. Kind of like Fox News played a old fake video, because it was fake last year when they first did it, of Ron Paul being booed when he won CPAC. And Fox News this morning said it was a mistake. They're sorry they got caught. Kind of like you get caught robbing a bank. You're coming out of the vault with big bags of money in your hands with dollar signs in your eyes, and it's a mistake, officer. It's a mistake. Kind of like it's a mistake we're now learning coast to coast. Just scores of cases. TSA are just robbing cash. Folks, I've had sunglasses, tripods stolen. I was talking to Eric Muller on his show. You know, he's had stuff stolen out of his bag. And I've had something stolen at JFK. At JFK. I had 2 gifts for my first daughter who had just been born recently, the silver rattle and one other toy. They had opened up the Tiffany packages that had bows on them, and one teething ring was gone, and the rattle was still there. I guess they didn't want the rattle. They were only like $100 a piece, but it was a gift, so we remember the birth and everything. And I had to go just a few weeks after she was born to a 9/11 event, so I made time to go out and get that for my firstborn daughter. My son's firstborn, but the first daughter we had, little Angel. And TSA just stole it. And now it's admitted at JFK alone. They're now pleading guilty, it's reported. 2 TSA agents stole more than $160,000. Who watches the watchers? But side issue. Let me continue with this. U.S. government shuts down 84,000 websites by mistake. The U.S. government has yet again shuttered several domain names this week. The Department of Justice and Homeland Security's ICE office proudly announced that they had seized domains related to counterfeit goods and child pornography. What they failed to mention, however, is that one of the targeted domains belongs to Free DNS Provider, and that 84,000 websites were wrongfully accused of links to child pornography crimes. This is the equivalent of, let's say you've got your website with Time Warner Cable in Austin. A lot of people do. And there's one website domain registered through the Roadrunner Cable. And let's say there's 10,000, this is a random example, case point. and they just shut down all the websites in Austin that have it and then put up a message that they're child pornographers. And they're the federal government. They think they can do this. As part of Operation Save Our Children, ICE Cybercrime Center again seized several domain names, but not without making a huge error. Last Friday, thousands of site owners were surprised by a rather worrying banner that was placed on their domain. Advertisement, distribution, transportation, receipt, possession of child pornography constitute federal crimes that carry penalties for the first-time offenders of up to 30 years in federal prison or a $250,000 fine, forfeiture, and restitution was the worrying message they read on their websites. Worrying? How about the defaming, the incredibly destructive? Somebody goes to get the phone number to their plumber, you forget, the plumber's phone number, you go to the plumber website and it says they're child porno people. And this shows how they can just flip switches and shut down websites. Flip switches and shut down whole ISPs. Flip switches and shut down whole DNS systems, just like Egypt did. Meanwhile, they're running around saying how great Google is overthrowing Egypt, how great it is, how horrible Mubarak was shutting off the web, and they're openly pushing in Congress for the legislation to implement what they've already got in place. They've already got the collective Internet's neck in the guillotine, and now they're just asking for Congress to pass the law so they can flip the switch. And then they'll do it in select cases that make it sound like it's reasonable. Oh, this guy was going to sell bombs. We shut his website off. Oh, this person was a child pornographer. Oh, this person was linking to copyright stuff. And it just expands out from there. So Kurt Nemo's article breaks all this down, and they have a new bill that would amend the Homeland Security Act of 2002 that would allow the government to shut down all or part of the Internet any time they want. Meanwhile, the media is making jokes about Glenn Beck, saying, that Google is government run. Well, here's French news agency. U.S. state criticizes Google search tactics. The top attorney, the state of Texas, on Wednesday revealed a list of demands for inside information intended to ferret out whether Google abused its power in online search ad arena. Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott wanted names of people responsible for Google Ads, search results, the business relations, along with internal documents and minutes from meetings at the California firm. Yeah, they don't just sell Google News or Google Web or Google Video where you pay to have your Google ads on the side when somebody searches. They don't just do that. Google allows you to buy when someone searches British Petroleum or somebody searches TSA, that it's TSA all at the top, that it's BP all at the top for the sometimes 30 pages deep where you can't see any. The searches are supposed to be whoever gets the most traffic, whatever has the keywords in it, that goes to the top. But they've changed their algorithm and admitted 2 weeks ago to shut down alternative news. And our article on that with this press release by Google was on the Drudge Report, if you forgot where that article could be found. And I'm going to have articles written today, tomorrow, and right through the weekend by Paul Joseph Watson and Steve Watson on this. But it's a cocktail of ways they're going after the web. And if you're doubting the Internet kill switch, here's USA Today. A raging debate. The headline is, Kill Switch Internet Bill Alarms Privacy Experts. A raging debate over new legislation and its impact on the Internet has tongues wagging and fingers pointing at Silicon Valley to D.C. Just as the Egyptian government recently forced the Internet to go dark, U.S. officials could flip a switch if the Protecting Cyberspace and National Asset legislation becomes law, says its critic. Proponents of the bill, which is expected to be reintroduced in the current session of Congress, dismiss the detractors as ill-informed and naive. I got Lieberman and Rockefeller and all of them, Senator Rockefeller, saying they want to start shutting off alternative media. The ominously nicknamed Kill Switch bill is sure to be a flashpoint of discussion at the RSA conference, the nation's largest gathering of computer security experts that take place here this week. The bill, crafted by Senator Lieberman and Susan Collins of Maine, Tom Carper of Delaware, aims to defend the economic infrastructure from a cyber terrorist attack, like Stuxnet that the government launched against itself. But it has free speech advocates and privacy experts howling over the prospect of a government agency quelling the communication of hundreds of millions of people. This is all about control, an attempt to control every aspect of our existence, says Christopher Feudo, cybersecurity expert who is chairman of the Security Fusion Solutions. I want to get Christopher Feudo on, Jaron, please. I consider it an attack on our personal right of free speech. Look what recently occurred in Egypt. It goes on. We would write articles 6, 7 years ago about Google, the Trojan horse of internet takeover, with all the proof of them being government run, and exactly how they're now rolling this out, and we got laughed at, even though we linked to all the proof. It's coming. It's here. They changed their algorithm. They're phasing it in 3 months ago. Massively hurting the number of searches we get and people linking to InfoWars and Prison Planet. But our growth rate is so incredible, and you're spreading the word about InfoWars.com and PrisonPlanet.com on MySpace and Facebook and YouTube and on street corners and at work, that we're still shooting up like a rocket. But we can go into Google Analytics that we have and see what they've done. They delisted us from Google News because of our Google bombs. They're scared. You better pick alternative sites you believe in and you believe are breaking through and hammer them out. Tell people at red lights to visit them. Email your friends. Get the buzz going. They're moving towards carving up and shutting the web down because we're hurting them. We're threatening them. We're getting the truth out. We're beginning to set more and more of the news agenda. We are the tip of the spear. And if they can start to shut us down, they're going to shut you down. Even if you don't like us, even if you don't totally agree with my views, fine. You've got to hang with the First Amendment. You've got to promote it. You've got to get it out. We've got to use the web while it's still open to a certain extent, because they're tightening the noose right now. The door is shutting right now. And if we get enough people awake and talking about this, there'll be enough furor that the system isn't able to get these draconian changes through. But it's up to you. With the V for Victory campaign with Infowars.com, with banner hangs, with online events. Everybody should make videos today. All our listeners should make, just turn on your camera, get on YouTube, and talk about Google taking over and killing the web. Give it a good headline, read over our article, cover your own research, and get, I mean, we've got hundreds of thousands of listeners that are on YouTube. All of you, make a video. Don't just do the answer to 1984, 1776 contest. Don't just do the V for Victory operation. Just go in all directions. Educate people so they understand how this creeping incremental takeover is happening and now gaining speed. We've got to use the web now, and we've still got it, and at the same time fight to keep it open and free. Okay, let's go to Ruben in Israel. Thanks for holding, Ruben. You're on the air.
Hi, Alex. I enjoy listening to you. A little caught by surprise there. I thought you were going to go on a little bit more. I've been listening to you for quite some time. I think the first time I learned anything about you was when you started raising the ruckus about what happened in Waco. And I can't right now remember when exactly that was.
It's 1995.
But, okay, you produced some videos, I believe. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. You made a big impression on some of my classmates in graduate school who were FBI agents and government agents. They were mad as a hornet at this story, and that got my attention of you a long time ago. And
they were mad at me? They were mad at me?
Well, you did not... By telling the truth, you embarrassed a lot of people.
Well, I went to public events and confronted Janet Reno. I went and confronted FBI agents at Waco in front of news cameras. And, yeah, we did get some death threats over that. So there were some folks you knew that were very upset.
For what you did. Because had you not done that, a lot of people wouldn't have started paying attention. But that's the first time I became aware of you, was my point, was this thing. And I just happened by coincidence to be in classes with FBI people, and they also were watching your film and listening to what you're saying. And several of them were upset because, you're exposing what they're doing. So it's been off and on. I'd see things through the years, and then I got busy and came to Israel 6 years ago, and there's a lot of things going on here.
Tell you what, stay there. You sound like an interesting caller, Ruben. Don't hang up, okay?
All right.
All right, I'm going to put you on hold. I'm going to come back to you. Then Tom, Nate, Jeff, Matt, I'll at least try to get to those calls ahead of Catherine Austin Fitch. But if you're still holding, I promise we'll take calls early for Catherine Austin Fitch. She can talk about any issue out there. She's an amazing lady. But we're going to get into the internet takeover, the economy, the housing market, everything. Ruben, stay there. Finish up your interesting points on the other side. Then more calls straight ahead. Infowars.com. Okay, going back to your phone calls. Ruben in Israel. Please continue with the points you wanted to make.
Okay. I feel like I'm talking to somebody I've known for a long time. You get that all the time, I'm sure, and who I respect. But I want to respectfully disagree a little bit, and with some of the historical information that some of your guests talk about Israel, what's going on. Now, the part I want to agree about is I've lived here for 6 years. I have been in that Illuminati temple that's called a Supreme Court of Israel, and I've watched people be really tried like an inquisition in there. And so much of your criticisms of Israel are correct. Many of us here have been trying for years to end the U.S. aid to Israel, and you probably are not aware of that. But a lot of even religious Jews would prefer to see an end to this, and it's something you...
Well, let me be clear. Look. I criticize Israel just like I criticize the U.S. government or the Chinese government. The reason a lot of the real Israel haters don't like me is because they know I don't have a hatred for Israel. I mean, I have a dislike for big corrupt operations, but I also don't like the camp that says if you criticize anything Israel's doing, you know, that you're an anti-Semite. So I won't be intimidated by those folks either. But go ahead.
I know absolutely you're not that, and I've gotten in arguments with people about defending you about that. There's the ADL is as much an enemy of the Jewish people as Stormfront or any other group, and a lot of us here, probably more than you want to believe, think this way. They do not talk for us. They do not represent us.
So what's the meat of what you're saying? Where am I wrong? Tell me.
Say again?
What's the meat of where I'm wrong? I mean, tell me.
Oh, I don't know that you're wrong. I just think there are some things that nobody's brought to your attention before.
Okay, tell me.
That's it. Let me focus strictly on the legal rights of Israel. That after, the Great War was not just a war in Europe, there's a war against the Turks. And those Allied powers took the land away from the Turks. And from that, they divided it all up and mainly gave to Muslims who were their allies. The Lawrence of Arabia crowd had a big influence. And, we can spend a long time trying to understand why, but in that time in Britain, there was a deep anti-Semitism still there that showed up. But certain forces in history in 1799, Napoleon declared he was going to return the Jews to the land. And a lot of people don't know that. And so the thing that we didn't just spring up here after the Shoah. There were moves to make Aliyah come to Israel long before that. And then when the Allied powers, the same people who set the borders, the people you call the New World Order, that's who they are. When these people divided up the land, they made the borders of Turkey, Greece, Saudi Arabia, all the countries. And the Jews had not been doing very well. Now, this was before the Holocaust, way before the Holocaust. Jews hadn't been living very well. There was a general acceptance of that and a desire to change that. Jews suddenly got equal rights. They didn't have that before. And unfortunately, families like the Rothschilds came up, opportunistic, thieving, all the things. They're not a nice family.
No, I think what you're saying is yes, the Rothschilds are globalist, and just because they're bad doesn't then mean that all Jews are involved in it. And I totally agree. Just like the Chinese government is corrupt, murdering killers, it's not because they're Asian, it's not because they're Chinese. Just like Hitler took over and was bad, didn't mean all Germans, were involved in that. They got conned. You know what? I'm out of time, but I think I get the gist of where you're going, Ruben. I appreciate your call, and I think you made your points. You're welcome to call back in any time. I, quite frankly, am just sick of the obsession with Israel. I just want freedom. We'll be right back. Tom in New York, you're on the air. Welcome.
Hey, Alex. Good to speak to you again.
Good to talk to you. What's on your mind?
Just wanted to bring up some 2 points. I'm in construction, so I was reading up on my OSHA regulations the other day, and I realized that the TSA is in complete defiance of those regulations.
Yeah, they're in violation of the radiation regulations. They have TSA now at checkpoints with even more high-powered scanners with their people standing under them with no protection, making families drive under it. They just do whatever they want. And there's a new article out that just went up at prisonplanet.com, Epidemic of TSA Criminality, more agents caught stealing cash from luggage, another arrested for assault. Go ahead.
Yeah, but as I was reading, I realized that they're supposed to put up notifications throughout the airport warning radiation exposure. All the TSA agents are supposed to be wearing radiation badges to monitor the amount of radiation they take in daily, and they just don't comply with any of this.
It's called tyranny, because then they would recognize the amount of radiation they're getting, but that's not happening. They won't even let Congress, 2 years into scanners being in, the last year they've put them in more places, but they've been going in for over 2 years, they won't even do a basic radiation study or release their internal studies to Congress. It's a lawless federal takeover group of crooks.
The way I look at it is that the reason they don't do it is because if the people actually seeing warning signs and radiation badges, they would have to ask themselves a question, what am I exposing myself and my family to?
That's what the globalists are all about. You've really, we should have Kurt Nimmo or Aaron Dykes do an article on this, because I've already talked about the fact that they're in violation of OSHA regulations. They're in violation of radiation laws that every dental office, every clinic, every hospital has to follow. It's incredible. They just do whatever they want, just like they radiated our own soldiers and shot little kids up with syphilis. The government is setting the precedent to do whatever they want.
The other thing I wanted to bring up to you, I'm sitting in my car the other day in New York parallel parking, and I hear radio spots for the Department of Homeland Security's E-Verify system. Apparently it's some kind of online system where employees could check up on the employers could check up on their employees.
Yes, that's what Ridge said 8 years ago, is that to have a job, this is all on record, you're going to have to go through Homeland Security checks. It's going to be a no-fly, no-gun-buy, no-work list, and they're going to have TSA-trained people in every city. This is the federal police force of just minimum-wage goons, raping, robbing, stealing, stripping down naked, running around saying they're God. Remember when that happened a few months ago?
Yeah, I actually called in a couple of weeks ago and told you about Swick and Swack.
About what?
Swick and Swack, Secure Worker Consortium, and Transportation Worker. Yeah. No, I found this interesting that there's radio spots all over the radio in New York. So this E-Verify system. The more I read about it, they actually have a YouTube video explaining it and how it could be easily abused.
Oh, Homeland Security has a system employers should use, and that's all about if they don't like you, you don't work. And this is all admitted. This is a total takeover of society. Ridge, everything he talked about 8 years ago is now being implemented. It's continuity of agenda. George Bush goes, Barack Obama comes in, it continues. Barack Obama leaves, it continues. This is a global program. Different names, but the same implementation all over the world.
Yeah, okay, that's all the points I wanted to make. I just wanted, to make sure you knew about this E-Verify system.
I was aware that they said to own a gun, to shop, to travel, to have a credit card, to have a job, you're going to have Homeland Security approval. I mean, look, the airports are the beta test to train you in that high security zone to then expand that out to shopping malls, Walmarts, workplaces, highway checkpoints, trains, buses, and now, 8 years after we warned you, because they told us what they would do, it's all happening. We'll be right back. Stay with us. rising housing. That's the latest headline at Solari.com. We're joined for the next 52 minutes, and we will take your calls on any issue you want to discuss. Catherine is obviously widely read and very informed about the globalist eugenics takeover. Catherine Austin Fitts is our guest, founder and managing member of Solari Investment Advisory Services, LLC, president of the Hamilton Securities Group Investment Bank and financial software developer, assistant secretary of Housing, Federal Housing Commissioner Bush 1, managing director and member of the board of Wall Street firm Dillon Read & Co. These are the most elite firms out there. Catherine has designed and closed more than $25 billion of transactions and investments to date and has led portfolio strategy on $300 billion of financial assets and liabilities. Solari.com, Solari.com is the website. Our websites are Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com, and PrisonPlanet.tv. And Catherine is here to talk about everything she talked about coming true, the acceleration of dollar devaluation, the Chinese calling for the end of it, the G20 headed up by the French calling for it, housing numbers continuing to plunge, the real state of the economy with a true financial genius. And then we'll get into a bunch of other issues with her, the unfolding police state, the open calls for internet kill switches while they attacked Egypt for their shutdown, while praising a shutdown of the web here. We're really getting deeper down the road into the New World Order. Catherine, great to have you on with us.
And you forgot to mention one of my credentials.
What is that?
Member in good standing of the Alex Jones fan club.
Oh boy.
Oh, it's so great to be back. I just love your show, Alex. I just love you. So it's always a pleasure. Now things are accelerating. We have really reached a tipping point. You know, for years, Alex, we had a bubble where we just printed more and more paper and more paper, and you know, you and so many really great people tried to warn us about, you know, we can't just keep printing paper like this. Well, now we've come into the end game, and now I'm doing a Solari report tonight, which is my sort of briefings for subscribers, and my theme tonight is going to be global debt for equity swap. And let me explain what I mean by that. When you print this paper, really what you're printing is bonds, and it's the bond market that's ballooned. We've had a long-term bull market in the bond market, and now we're sitting here with all these bonds, and it's not like we've created more real things. You know, so there's the same amount of land and the same amount of gold, and you know, there's some more people, and now we've got all this paper, and it's sitting in the bond market, and it's kind of eyeing the equity market and tangibles and the precious metals and saying, uh-oh, maybe we have to get out of paper into real things. How are we going to do that? And that's the shift, because when you get out of the bubble, the next thing that happens is everybody's got to get out of debt and get into equity, and that's the process you're seeing accelerate. And it's really, you know, some days it's just, I know, because you're watching the news every day. You come to your website, and there's more news than the Wall Street Journal these days, and it's accelerating, and it's kind of dizzying. We had a perfect example is we've had the Germans basically take over the New York Stock Exchange, and there's almost no discussion in the mainstream media and in Congress.
That was the first big issue, but I want you to put it in layman's terms, what these consolidations of the stock exchanges mean.
Well, what's happening is, if you look at how we're integrating global trading, there's tremendous redundancy in the exchanges. And there's also pressure to centralize control. And, so that's clearly happening. Now, what exactly is driving the merger with the Germans at this time? That's a big question mark. I'm not clear. But make no mistake about it, what you're talking is basically the Germans controlling our biggest stock exchange. I mean, we're talking about deleting sovereign government here. We're talking about literally the Germans in control. Now, it's important to point out that the critical issue here is going to be who controls the systems. Because if Lockheed and DynCorp is still controlling and operating the systems, there's really not as much of a change of control as it looks like.
And then meanwhile, that little friendly, nice guy named John Stewart, that's not his real name, his brother runs the New York Stock Exchange, and we've got the communist Chinese owning the majority of the debt. Next, the private Federal Reserve that's international. Now the Germans coming in and taking over the stock exchange with almost no news. And this unifies the fraud, so the inside players are able to engage in fraud and not get caught. Correct me if I'm wrong, but studying this as a layman, the manipulation of stock markets gets exposed by other stock markets that are connected to it. But if they get it all under one house, then the sky's the limit.
Right. This guy, well, pretty much the sky is the limit now anyway, because the game has so pushed beyond the regulators' ability, both intellectually and politically, to deal with it. That what we've seen, Alex, as we saw over the last 15 years with the bubble, tremendous fraud. I've talked a lot about the mortgage fraud, which I'm more familiar with, than the securities fraud or the equities fraud. But we've seen tremendous fraud both in the mortgage market, the securities market, the bond market. The result of that fraud was the people who did it got refinanced out with the bailouts. You know, so not only did they engineer the fraud, but they got refinanced out in total, and the fraud was a huge success. That's why I call it a financial coup d'etat. And the reality is, you know, from their point of view, it was simply a takeover. And it was a successful financial coup d'etat. And there's literally been no indictments or no prosecution, and the message is clear. It was a fundamental re-engineering as opposed to incompetence or what they think of as criminal behavior.
Yeah, this has all been methodically set up and prepared. Goldman Sachs and others got their regulators in over Ireland, the U.S., places like New Zealand, everywhere. They ran the same scam, and now they openly admit, yes, we're going to slowly kill the dollar. Yes, we're going to have the SDR as the new currency. Yes, you're going to pay carbon taxes and all of this to private banks. So the Ponzi scheme operators are now openly setting up world government run by them, holding our countries hostage to the derivatives debt that we don't owe, that they've created. And Bernie Madoff from prison comes out and says the banks had to know on Monday what he was doing, and of course they knew. He was just a mid-level player. So let's go through the global government, what it looks like, who the players are, and then what's happening currently as they bring in the austerity and lie to people and say, cut the paychecks, get rid of the teachers, raise the taxes, steal more of the pension funds, and that'll fix the debt, when they never even address the 1.5 quadrillion so that we could pay all of our money in taxes, get rid of all of the services, and still it wouldn't even put a dent in the 1.5 quadrillion. So they're scapegoating Wisconsins and the Irish and others right now.
Well, but let's break it down, because if you look at how much money's been siphoned off, when they say there's no money, you know, question number one is, well, where did the trillions that have disappeared, including illegally, go to? So question number one, when you say that there's no money, well, you know, it's like saying there's no milk in the milk bucket when there's a hole in the bottom. Where's it been running out to? So the money went somewhere, and that's question mark number one. But question mark number two is, we've known for 50 years that we were running the United States population on an unsustainable basis. Now, during that 50 years, we've produced trillions of dollars of retirement savings, and that's part of the money that sort of disappeared down the hole. But the reality is, everybody in America has known that this is not a sustainable system. We've all avoided it. It's not just the elites, but we've avoided it too. One of the reasons the politics have worked the way they've worked, Alex, is because we've said, you know, give us more money, we don't want to change. And every year we've been able to do that in the governmental mechanism.
But that's like a bass biting down on a purple worm. I mean, we're certainly the ignorant fish that's biting into the hook, but I'm talking about where that hook...
We're not ignorant, Alex. I mean, the way you get power over, you know, to solve a problem, you need power. The way you get power is you take responsibility.
I agree.
And the reality is, you know, let's look at the money. Whatever the American government is doing, every one of us is financing it by paying our taxes. Okay?
Yes.
Every one of it is financing it by putting money in pension funds and not having a position on where it goes. Everyone is of us is donating money, including tithing to churches who are supporting and going along with all of this. Every one of us is shopping or banking at the banks and the stores that are doing that, okay? If you look at how our money works, household by household, county by county, we have the power to say, you know something, we're not going to finance this anymore. If you, my church, wants, you know, my tithe every month, then you've got to change, you know, what you're doing and how you're doing it. I'm not just going to pay taxes to a government that's running drugs. I'm going to go get a lawyer, and we're going to battle this out in court, or we're going to organize locally and do a local escrow over tax money, as long as you're running the government on an illegal basis and trains are going out the back door. So, in other words, we're all participating in this, and we're all complicit in it, and it's by seeing that we see the opportunities to start to really make serious change.
Well, Catherine, I agree with you that we need to look in the mirror if we want to see the main, you know, culprit, but at the same time, I'm talking about the brains that are actually implementing the scam. I mean, what you're talking about is what black folks for 50 years have talked about, that if they just spent their money in their neighborhoods, they would become wealthy, but they never do that. So I understand they are part to blame. I am part to blame. But I'm also talking about the overall economic system that designs it where it's so easy to be defrauded, and it's so easy for the general public to be ignorant. I mean, you know what's happening, I know what's happening, but still the general public doesn't. They're starting to wake up. Let's come back and break it all down with Catherine Austin Fitts. Catherine Austin Fitts is our guest financial expert extraordinaire. Catherine, I mean, we know what they're doing. We know what the problem is, but summing it up, what is the end game of these people if we don't stop them? I mean, it's just unlimited, the amount of theft they're engaging in, their destruction of the economy by design, and they offer the solution being given them more power, then things get worse, and the solution is give them more power. You talked about government drug dealing. I mean, it's in Bloomberg. It's in Bloomberg that $367 billion in you know, one major U.S. bank alone of drug money, and it turns out they're running the aircraft.
Right. I think it's pretty simple. You have a small group of people who have been in control of governance on planet Earth, and they're looking at the growth of population, and they're saying we need a plan to be in environmental harmony, and we need a way to integrate new technology, because the growth, you know, the new technology and discoveries in technology are accelerating that make it much harder to stay in control. And so I think what they're saying is we need a much smaller population, a population that can be will be much easier to control, and will leave us in control, but also will bring the planet back into environmental harmony, because living in the current lifestyle on the planet we're doing is, you know, it's just not environmentally in harmony the way it's being done now. So the question for them is, how do we get to environmental harmony and stay in control and be able to integrate new technology without losing control? And the reality is they want a much greater centralization, and they want a much smaller population. And I think all the different things we're watching are not, you know, we have to be careful not to compare what's happening to the official myth of what's supposed to be happening. And we have to step back and look at what's happening and saying, okay, well, this is really happening. It's a little bit like, you remember that line in Rosemary's Baby when she's being raped by the, you know, demonic figure, and she says, oh, this is really happening. Well, you know, step one is we have to get out of denial and say this is really happening. You know, things are very different. We have an official story of what's supposed to be happening. We need to let go of that and start looking what's really going on. And the reality is we literally have a group of people, Alex, who have now gotten a hold of much more advanced technology, not only that you know, that it is adopted generally, but is beyond what we know exists. And they literally have become, and this is Richard Dolan's expression, a breakaway civilization. They no longer consider themselves of the same species as us, and they never, you know, they no longer consider themselves subject to the same laws and rules that we're subject subject.
And by the way, the globalists all write books and make statements about this. I cover it in my film Endgame. They believe we're animals. It's social Darwinism, and it's their right to dumb us down, get us in control grids, and then kill us. And then I'm here warning the general public. A lot of them are listening. Others make jokes. And the globalists say, see, they want us to kill them. They deserve it.
Well, there's no doubt there's a cycle of disrespect between the general population and the people who are governing. And one of the reasons that there is, Alex, is because, and I speak as somebody who, at a very minor, lower level, has been part of that group. You know, when you try and govern, when you try and build a consensus for turning an aircraft carrier and turning it in time, it is such a frustrating experience that at some point you give up. You give up trying to have an intelligent conversation with the general population, and you just decide to manipulate. And you decide to manipulate because you've got to turn the aircraft carrier in time. And essentially what you learn is eventually, you know, the crowd will always do what makes the crowd the most money. There was a really brilliant comment in an interview that Julian Assange did with Time magazine about a month or two ago, in which he said, you know, political change in America doesn't result in change, and that's because America's been fiscalized. And what he meant by that is if you drill down and look at every household in America and where their income comes from, and every county level, you know, sort of municipal infrastructure and where their income comes from, up to the state, the federal government is the primary source of income at this point. I mean, we're much more socialized financially than the Soviet Union was before it fell, and literally the dependency on the federal till is so enormous that even when you get political change, you don't get change because everybody's on the dole. And that's why I keep coming back to the money and dealing with the money, because unless we shift the money, we're going to sit financially dependent on the very people who are trying to kill us.
All right, I want to talk to you as a former insider about how you see them rolling this out. Then I want to talk about some solutions. I want to get into your latest article on your website dealing with the finances being cut off. And then phone calls, folks. Your phone calls coming up. Stay with us. Okay, going back to Catherine Austin Fitz. Catherine, you got this new article up on Solari that just came out today with some very important information, decapitalizing housing. What do we see in the markets that you talk about things reaching a tipping point or V2, point of no return?
I talked, Alex, when we first started about this shift between bonds and equities. And one of the things that means, given the pressure on the bond market and sort of the end of the bull bond market, is now financing the things we financed with fixed income is now going to shift, and it's going to be much more expensive. And what that means is mortgage financing is going to be much harder to get. It's going to be more expensive, tougher terms and conditions. Now, that's part of policy, a policy determination by, as you would call the globalists, but it's one that would have to happen anyway because of the amount of paper that we've printed and the sort of the day of reckoning being here. So this is very tough news on the housing market. At the same time, we see the federal government, and part and parcel of that is interest rates starting to creep up and the risk that they could go up even much higher. But we see the federal government announcing that they're going to basically liquidate, shut down, or end Fannie and Freddie in some way. So that means tremendous subsidy that's been flowing in keeping the housing market going cut off. And in the decapitalizing housing, I just list a whole lot of other things.
So the other shoe is beginning to drop.
The other shoe is beginning to drop. And believe it or not, one of the big issues is not direct on housing. It's that everybody who's living in housing is experiencing rising expenses and falling income. It's what I call the slow burn. But I was up in Philadelphia for a couple months at the end of the year, and I had one person, very, tiny, lovely little row house. Their utility bill last year was $200 a month. This year it's $800 a month. They're choking. And during all the blizzards, you heard that from all over the country. So that means the cost of maintaining, repairing, heating a home is skyrocketing.
And the head of the Energy Department said last week they're going to shut down at least 500 power plants. China's building 3 to 5 a week. We can't build new ones. And they're literally saying they're going to bankrupt the coal industry. Whether you like coal or not, that's more than half of our energy. I mean, this is economic warfare, a post-industrial world.
Well, what this means is a tremendous amount of the growth. Most Americans have always thought of their home as an investment. We're going into a world where your home is not an investment, it's a consumption good. You know, it's a consumption good just like, buying a car, okay, or I don't know, buying a dress, okay. So it's now a consumption good, and a lot of the growth in the value of homes has come from the debasement of the currency and from larger homes. So we've had a massive infusion of federal credit to make mortgage financing cheaper, more accessible, and that's financed everybody having more and more space. Now it's going to reverse and go the other way. And so whether it's the expense part of maintaining and owning a home, or the financing, or simply the size, what we're going to see is smaller and smaller homes driven by it's going to look like people's preferences. So we're going to see a real reversal of where we've been, and that has a very important strategy or implications to the strategies of most households on what kind of home they're going to have, where they're going to have it, what they're going to pay for it, and how they're going to finance it.
I'll tell you what's incredible, and I want to get your inside baseball take on this, working at the highest levels of government. 2 weeks ago, the White House, about 28 hours, 30 hours after we wrote a report that it was energy policies causing a lot of the blackouts because of increased consumption and not having enough power. And the Texas Reliability Energy Commission agreed with us. Heritage agreed with us in their analysis. The White House actually responded on their front page and said that we were liars. But then the next day, the Energy Secretary comes out and says we're going to shut down a lot of the plants. I mean, it's incredible. Why would the White House respond to us? Are we hitting pretty close to the bone?
They're not concerned with libel law. Yeah, no, I think there's real sensitivity here, and they're, essentially there's tremendous effort being put into keeping the official story going, but the official story is wearing thin, and so I think there's real sensitivity on these issues. Now, what we need for everybody in America to realize, look, you've got to be on one side or the other. Most Americans think that they can stay in the middle of the road, and that's the workable strategy. The reality is, there is no middle of the road anymore. If you look at what's going on, and I just spent a half an hour with a naturopath yesterday, going through the details of what is in the chemtrails and what that does to your body, and what you have to do to try and mitigate it. It's the most, I don't know if you've ever done a show on Morgellons disease, but if you really get down and look at what is being sprayed overhead by the government, and you really face that, it's a real day of reckoning, Alex, because you have to say, well, why am I financing this? Because every one of us, with our money, whether it's where we bank or how we pay our tax, we're financing this.
Yeah, we've gotten so snuggled in with accepting being abused that they can come out and admit they're radiating kids, radiating TSA, shooting people up with syphilis in Guatemala, UN caught giving kids live polio constantly in the news. And it's just, they're killing us for our own good. Let's love the government. I mean, the people running things are literally... See,
I don't think people... my personal experience with most Americans is they're scared. They're scared, and the control is so complete, including through their household income, that they don't see a pathway to do something about it. And that's why it's so important that we be free to talk about it, which is why I'm a member in good standing of the Alex Jones fan club, because, you're leading the conversation, and I think part of it is getting a critical mass of people to face, this is really happening, this is really going on, and we have the power to do something about it. But we have to be prepared to talk about it. We have to be prepared to face it. And the reality is, Alex, we have to be prepared to face our own financial and operational complicity. I mean, we've watched drugs coming into our neighborhood targeted our kids for 50 years. And we've let it go on. And let's face it, a lot of households in our community are financially dependent on killing our own kids. You know, and so...
Well, that was my next point. I mean, I'm sure you saw Bloomberg and AP a few months ago, where one of the biggest banks in the country, Wachovia, admittedly had $360+ billion in just a 3-year period of drug money and owned the planes delivering it around. I mean, what more do we need? I mean...
Well, what we need is a financially practical pathway out of the dependency on all this stuff. And now it's very interesting. When I realized how bad things were in 1998, I said, you know, I have to come clean. I have to get I have to withdraw and stop making money from the system. And so I've tried as much as possible to withdraw. So has you, so has many others. We need thousands and thousands of people to realize, you know, we don't have to go along. Another world is possible. Let's start to shift our money, shift our time, shift our attention, put as many degrees of separation between you and the people who are trying to kill you.
And let me throw a quick example out on this and get your take, and we'll go to the phone calls. If you go back 12, 13 years ago or so, no matter where you lived in the country, it was almost impossible to find truly organic food. But as people began to purchase it, it built a market for it. Right. And so now you've got as much choice with organic as you do with the horrible poison stuff, but the system comes in then to change the rules where they don't have to list that salmon is a cross-species chimera clone. Or where they don't have to tell you that some grapes are really GMO. And I see that same thing now in Wisconsin where they're saying, you know what, we're going to take even more money out of your paycheck and put it in a pension, and it'll run right down out of the hole into the ground. They'll never get. So I see them moving to seize everybody's paychecks. Homeland Security's announcing they will control the paychecks. Everything will be wired through them. You'll have to have a Homeland Security check on your deal to be able to have a job. This is already happening, so they know that people are going to figure out the emergency exit. They're now moving to try to block them. They know we could see with the financial system people withdrawing like they did from GMO, and so they're trying to block those exits.
Right, but let me give you an example, because ultimately I think they're going to fail. What you're watching are desperate measures by desperate people. They're scared. And you wouldn't be seeing the kind of things we're seeing if they weren't. Now, I'm not, I don't underestimate the resources that they have, because you're literally looking at a group of people that have incredible technology and have essentially stolen and now control all the assets on the planet. So I'm not saying that they're not incredibly financially powerful and they don't have whiz-bang technology. But the reality is it takes, traditionally to run a civilization, it takes an organizing principle. And it takes what the Chinese refer to as the mandate of heaven. And these folks clearly, they don't have that. And if anything, the thing that's going to destroy them is they're going to kill each other, because they're not grounded in a higher, positive organizing principle. So ultimately, I just don't think it's going to work.
So
Alex.
All that evil men entirety to flourish is that good men and women do nothing. We have to put out our organizing principle versus theirs, and we're going to beat them if we stand up and take action. Incredible, Catherine Austin Fitts. Let's go to some phone calls. Nate in Pennsylvania, thanks for holding her on the air.
Hey, Alex and Catherine. Nice to talk to you this afternoon. Glad to hear that the fight continues, and just wanted to say that the effect you guys are having is immense. Personally taken Catherine's advice to stop giving them your data. Really, just every time she's on, it brings a ray of hope into my life. So just wanted to thank her for that. But, Alex, I don't know if today, did you happen to hear about the Dr. Oz show today?
No.
Dr. Oz actually had the interview with you and Dr. Wakefield on his show today. He had a clip of it.
What did he do?
It was about the cause of autism. And I sat down and I just couldn't believe it. Here's Dr. Oz having a wonderful discussion with the audience and a panel of doctors. And for all intents and purposes, it's coming out.
I want to say this about Dr. Oz, and again, I watch Glenn Beck maybe once a month. I watch Dr. Oz maybe once a month. I'm busy. But I saw a piece when he had Mr. Smith on. What's his first name? He's the expert on GMOs. I've interviewed him.
Jeffrey Smith.
Yeah, Jeffrey Smith. He had him on and let him lay out the facts of GMO killing people. I mean, that shows how far we've come, that Beck has to talk about the New World Order, and that Oz can now talk bad about GMO on national TV, and you're saying a pretty fair piece and playing a clip for my show. Whoa, that's amazing.
I was floored. I mean, it said at the top of the screen, courtesy, Infowars.com, and I was thinking, oh my goodness. I mean, you just got tons of airtime on there. So I'm just thinking, I'm hoping those people go and check it out. But the discussion, the audience, I mean, everybody was just involved, and I hope you get a chance to see it.
Well, listen, I got to jump, but I appreciate that call, Nate. How exciting is that? That we're seeing things like that, Catherine?
Well, what it means is they have to protect their channel. In other words, what you're watching is the mainstream will blank it out until they're forced to.
It's self-interest again.
Right. Well, what's happening is they're losing market share. So they'll shift when they absolutely have to, and when they think they have enough control. I mean, I think they think with the food safety bill and the new USDA regulations, that they have to shift this way, and they need to kind of process the grief through the mainstream to get the channel. But, it's good that it's moving, but it's still not, you still have to shift the money.
Yeah,
you still have to shift the money. It's not enough to shift the conversation. You have to shift the money, too.
But it starts first with the conversation.
Absolutely.
To use another Chinese proverb, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And you're taking us a lot of steps here, Catherine. Jeff in Iowa, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi. I would like to get both your takes on a defensive and an offensive economic strategy against the globalists. One, defensive. Let's pick a few regions or areas that have enough libertarianism and enough subsistence farming and hunting, along with a cosmopolitan city-type environment to sustain us through the crash that's coming, say Austin or New Hampshire, maybe the foothills of California, and put our money in there locally so we can survive with subsistence farming.
Well, there are already a lot of communities like that, and my job is just to generally try to wake people up and let them know what's happening. But yes, these moves, even if it's you and 20 friends that move into a general area and promise to support each other, or you and your friends move outside the city, I've now done that. I mean, I'm now doing what Catherine challenged me to do 2 years ago on air. Catherine?
Well, I think it is a great idea. We encourage people to do circles. But anytime you can get together with like-minded people in your area, or even by phone, by network, and start to talk about how you can shift your money to finance the strategic resources you need, whether it's energy or food, it's a wonderful thing to do. Because the reality is the way to have a resource is to finance it, and or to control it, do it yourself.
Jeff, that's a great idea. What's the other one?
Yeah, the offensive one, nonviolent siege of Bilderberg. Shut it down. Shut it down.
I agree. Bilderberg coming up in a few months. There should be 1 million people there, not 500. But we've gone from none to 500, so let's do it. It's up to you. Your listeners still got the resources. Identify the globalists. We'll be right back. More calls straight ahead. Super bad. I got something that makes me want to shout. Okay, let's go ahead and talk to Corbin in Georgia. You're on the air with Catherine Austin Fitz. Go ahead.
How you doing, Alex?
Good.
I was just calling, just want to congratulate you for all you're doing. And my second thing is, I'm only 21, and I've been, following all the corruption, ever since I was really born. And, I believe in destiny, and I was born on February 6th, the same day as Bob Marley and Adam Fossshop. Do you know who that is?
I think so.
Yeah, he's the creator of the Illuminati. And my whole point behind that is that I think I was born to, expose some of this stuff, too. And my whole thing is, I want to,
Yeah, I thought you said Adam Weishaupt, but it didn't sound quite like it. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's German, so I know it's...
Yeah, really Ingolstadt University. Real quick, do you have a question or comment for... I wish we had more time.
Yeah, but my thing is, I just want to... I've been riding around Atlanta, and they have, cameras all over. They took our street lights down to install cameras, every few hundred feet from each other. But my whole point is, I want to ask, why haven't we started a march or something yet?
I appreciate your call. Well, I mean, we're all atomized. It's hard to get together. We are starting a march in our own daily lives, making decisions with the way we spend money that will bring down the globalists. Catherine?
One of my favorite books that I've read in the last year is a book called Prophetic Imagination by a guy named Walter Brueggemann, and he talks, Alex, about how the way Moses brought down the empire was to leave it in first and foremost in his mind and imagination, to just persuade people that they don't have to go along and that they can withdraw. And I think it's the same here. We need to say goodbye to the system and proceed to make other plans on our own.
So come out of her. Come out of Babylon.
Yeah, just and before you can leave a place, you need to leave it in your mind, and then you need to leave it in your pocketbook, and you need to find other people who want to leave with you. And
well, a lot of that's turning off television, and that's why they're having to put some of the truth on TV to keep people tuned into all the other lies they lace.
Right. Well, I would turn off your, one of the 3 things you can all do in the next 30 days is turn off your TV. You don't need any more entrainment, subliminal programming. Eat fresh food. The food system is killing us. You've got to find local farmers and local food sources, or learn to grow your own, and make sure you get fresh water. So and for heaven's sakes, get your money out of paper and out of the big banks.
Wow, what you just said is so beautiful. Just getting our bodies straight, and I'm trying to do that, and it's so hard to get off the coffee and all those type of things and the fattening food. But just as you get more sleep, just as it makes everything clearer. That's why the globalists try to poison the food and water. They want us off balance.
The last 7 months, do you know what sugar futures are up in the last 7 months? 88%. So if you're not off sugar yet, you're going to get off sugar.
Yeah.
So really what we have, look at what you have under your power and can do in the next 30 days to protect yourself and your family. And the more you do that, and the more people who do that, the more we stop being atomized and can connect and find each other.
And support alternative media and organizations and radio stations and people that tell the truth. Even if you don't have money, spread the word about those. This is how we're going to change the world. I apologize to Michael, George, Sam, Ed, and others. You'll have to call back in tomorrow, but I appreciate you trying. Catherine Austin Fitz, Solari.com. Always amazing to have you on. God bless you, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
God bless you, Alex.
There she goes, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be back tomorrow live on the Friday edition, Power Packed, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central, back Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. The globalists are moving at hyperspeed, Mach 10 right now. Afterburners are melting because they've almost got their world government, but we woke up to them, and so it's all badly coordinated. If you stand up and say no, they will fall. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.